Welcome back to the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts saw the ball drop last night and tried to fetch it. That's Lenny. I'm Mina Kimes. We actually did see the ball drop because it was 9 p.m. Pacific, which was about 45 minutes before I fell asleep.
Yeah, I fighting off a little bit of a travel cold. Got a 7-month-old in the house, and it's week 17 of the NFL season. I was in bed at 9 p.m. I was watching
Woo.
Penn State, Boise State on my phone. Fell asleep at a cool 9:30. Oh, got 11 hours. Felt amazing.
Oh my gosh. The washed stories of early parenthood. I went to Home Goods for the first time. Have you ever been to Home Goods?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Paradise.
Oh,
Absolute
absolutely.
paradise.
Yeah.
Okay.
So many things I didn't know I need. Gravy boats, butter dishes. What a thrill.
I actually said the words like, "I need an extra cart" when I got in there. Okay, we're not gonna talk about Home Goods. We are not gonna talk about much of week 18 because week 18, whoo baby. Week 18, this is one of the worst week 18s in recent memory,
Yeah.
Ben, like,
I
in
was
terms of
about to
meaningful
hit you with
games.
you're not excited for, and then I realized I don't know most of the games. Like off the dome, I was like, wait, Colts, Jaguars, yes. And it'll be Mitch Trubisky against the Patriots. Oh, right, that's correct. Yeah. This is a sleepy one.
So we are gonna preview Vikings Lions, which is obviously it's funny because this is one of the worst week 18s in recent memory, but this is one of the best, most meaningful week 18 games in recent memory as well. It is an absolute banger with major ramifications. Of course, they're fighting for the 1 seed and home field advantage in the playoffs. And then we're gonna hit briefly Bengals Steelers, which does have some interesting implications. But then after that, we're not gonna talk about the other games. Sorry. However, we are gonna talk about something that I think a lot of listeners might be interested in because most listeners' teams are out of it right now. So the exercise that I propose to you is we're going to go through every single team that didn't make the playoffs. And I understand that there's a few that are on, we can kind of address who's on the fringe right now and give the number one reason why we believe they're not in the postseason.
Yeah. And we're doing Vikings Lions first, or we
We're doing
are
Vikings Lions first. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Good.
We're
I'm not
talking about the
emotionally
actual
ready
football.
yet to talk about what happened to Jaguars, Titans, Patriots at all. I need to warm up a little bit with some actual good teams.
It's so funny because when we did resolutions, I gave myself the AFC, and I think giving you the AFC for this is actually much meaner. Like,
Yeah, I got punished twice. I got NFC playoff teams give gifts, which was like 11 total teams, and now I'm back on AFC, which is the 9 saddest teams in football.
yeah, it's really sad. Lions, Vikings, not sad at all. It's a great game. We'll start here. So I went back and looked at the last time these teams played. It was obviously an awesome, very high scoring game. And what stood out to me, Ben, looking back at my notes from that game and sort of the stats that were sort of stood out to me, and I've cited this actually through the season. I believe in that game, and it's been a while since then, but
Mhm.
these teams are largely the same. Well, the Lions offense and the Vikings defense are largely the same.
Yeah.
The Lions defense is very much not so. We'll get to that side of the ball, but I want to start in the Lions offense versus the Vikings defense, which is sort of the premier matchup. My belief uh, throughout the season was, and again, I've referred back to this. I actually think the Lions offense put on tape how you attack this Vikings defense. And every time the teams has gone up against the Vikings, whether it's the Packers or a good team, I have cited that game as like, if you can do, and very few teams can, what Detroit did in this game in terms of winning on early downs, attacking aggressively over the middle of the field, the deep middle of the field,
Mhm.
which of course Jared Goff loves to do. On inbreakers in this game, he went 11 for 12 for 168 yards and a touchdown. Digs, posts, crossers. That is where this very good Vikings defense is vulnerable, Ben, and the Lions are uniquely equipped to go after them in that way.
Yeah, I think watching that game back, what stood out to me was on those first couple of drives, Detroit is trying some stuff
Yeah.
and, base offense, okay, whatever. And they are losing to the early pressures. They're losing to early blitzes. There's penetration up the middle, and Goff is immediately under pressure. And they had a backup right guard, and right, Kevin Zeiler was out. And so they're kind of,
Right.
ironing out some wrinkles, what have you. Third, fourth drive, they said, all right, we're running zone, right? We are going to stop trying to get perfect play calls out there. And we are just going to try to get nice matchups, Penei Sewell leading out for us, and we'll run behind Brock Wright, and we're going to let our backs make us right. And we're going to kind of try to simplify this running game. They were a lot more successful running the ball zone and duo. They didn't pull anybody, not a single puller on a run play in this week 7 game. And then that's going to allow us to get to play action. And they're able to hit on explosives on some of the zone action stuff, right? The Amon-Ra St. Brown big touchdown was split zone
Yeah.
play action. The Jameer Gibbs explosive touchdown was just a straight zone run because they have the dudes, right? They have the horses. And I love this Vikings defense, and I love the way a lot of these players play. Andrew Van Ginkel, everybody loves him, and we talked about Josh Metellus last week, incredible player, and they've got guys who are really well suited for this defense and shine in it. But in terms of Jimmys and Joes, in terms of Penei Sewell versus Andrew Van Ginkel, you like your matchup,
Yeah.
right? In terms of Graham Glasgow climbing up to Blake Cashman, Ivan Van Pace, Jameer Gibbs against Pace and Space, you like your matchup. And so this became a game where Ben Johnson, I thought, did a good job reducing himself and just saying, let's let our winners go win. And then Goff, especially, right? You need a quarterback who's going to be able to consistently make the right plays, especially against a pressure team. And I've talked about Goff against pressure before. He's been good against the blitz this year, and he was lights out in that first matchup. So the Lions won it with Jimmy's and Joes, and they still do have those Jimmy's and Joes on offense.
Yeah, your point about the first quarters. In the first quarter, I was actually kind of nervous at the
Yeah.
time. I knew what happened, but they were losing on those early downs, and that's the thing with this Vikings defense. If you lose on those early downs, it's over. You have to not only win on those, but you have to attack, right? Because that's where they send pressure and where we've seen teams fall behind in their series. But your point about the protection too is what stood out. Like a lot of these explosive plays, just going back and watching them on some of them, they were leaving guys in. There was I think it was it the first touchdown, the one where Tim Patrick motions and then ends up
Yeah,
blocking. And
that's
yeah,
the
they were
long Saint one. Yeah, and they go full slide, and then it's Tim Patrick as the motion man and the back go take an end. Just way
and
by numbers. Yeah.
right, and they're sending pressure, playing quarters behind it. But the way you beat quarters is if you're willing to again really
Yeah.
attack downfield over the middle of the field, which Jared Goff very much so is. I think they just they do match up well with them. Like we can talk to your point about kind of the
Mhm.
Jimmys and Joes. All season long we've talked about Ben Johnson's schematic brilliance and some of the interesting things they do. But I actually just think like the Lions' identity as an offense, in terms of their ability to just be a zone running team and play action pass off of that, it does
Mhm.
match up well with this Vikings defense in a way that very few offenses do.
Yeah, and the one of the things that I think there's so many things Johnson does well that are the easy things to highlight. The under center, or outside zone, or wide zone, play action, bootlegs, trick plays, whatever. One of the things that you've seen the Lions increasingly accept this year, as they've transitioned from being we're like a Jared Goff offense doing our best to like we are a star team with star talent. One of the things they've transitioned to is they have a lot more plays now that are just get Jameer Gibbs the ball while he's moving. Get Jameson Williams the ball while he's moving. Even like the theory behind the hook and ladder play that scores against the Niners is like, what if we were positive Jameson Williams had the ball and he was already moving fast? Like that's just the theory behind it. Is we have guys now who are so good in space that there's a lot more designed screens, intentional dump offs. There was a lot of in this Vikings game. Goff just quickly getting the ball to the back in structure, right? Not even reading out all the dagger and the deep cross and everything. Just, Gibbs got some room. And they're in a fire zone, which means their guys are packing the deep zones and they're trying to read everything out. There's a lot of space. Just give it to Gibbs and let's see if he can break a tackle. Sometimes he doesn't, right? Sometimes it's a great Harrison Smith play, great Metellus play. Sometimes it's not, right? And you rip off that explosive. And so one of the things that Johnson, like, this under center running game is good against the Vikings. This deep middle passing game is good against the Vikings. But also, when they're spinning all those bodies around, sometimes one of the best solutions is just get the ball quickly to a dude with speed. And then he's going to be able to find a lot of room for you after the catch.
Yeah, this is sort of again when I talk about like the Lions can do everything you have to do against this
Right.
Vikings team. One of the things with running the ball well on early downs, attacking downfield over the middle of the field, play action, and then the other thing is kind of what you talked about, which is those when they send blitzes. If you have a quarterback who can throw quickly into the spaces that are voided intelligently, and then you have players who are playmakers in space. It actually isn't. Funny thing is, I looked at the Vikings' worst 3 performances by EPA per play. One was that Rams game where Matthew Stafford just went nuclear. One was the Lions game, pardon me, against the Vikings, and then the other one, the Vikings game was actually the third. The other one was the Bears, which is hilarious.
Which
now
Bears
to
game?
think about. The one where Caleb Williams played really well.
Okay. Yeah. So
It was like
Thanksgiving?
27-30. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
27-30 one. And the Bears actually did some of the things we're talking about. Like I don't know if you remember this, but they actually had a bunch of screens that were really successful in that game. And I think that's kind of the funny thing about the Lions, right? Or the Vikings, I keep saying. They're like probably one of the best screen defending teams in the NFL. Van Ginkel himself is arguably the best screen defender in all of football. But if you can hit it just right,
Mhm.
if you can really like time it up and you got a guy who has speed, you can punish them for some of these pressures. But so from that perspective, because I think we're in agreement here about the Lions being able to kind of replicate what they did. Is there anything you would do differently if you were Brian Flores, or do you think there's anything this defense can do differently to disrupt Jared Goff?
I was really hoping I'd get to ask you that because I don't know a good answer. So I was going to try to do the podcast thing where I ask the question first and then see if you got.
Not on
Yeah,
my watch.
yeah. It's the Mina Kimes Show. It's my fault. I think that I like. I don't like getting a free rusher on Goff because Goff will just throw it. Right, he will
Yeah.
just uncork it, and sometimes it'll die a little bit. If the rusher's close, and he has to step into the bucket. But oftentimes he'll get rid of the ball. Like he adjusted hot with St. Brown a couple times in this game. Like he will find the space, he'll make the right decisions. He's smart enough now. He's better enough now. He can do that. So I don't want to rush with the intent of like getting home as much and like delivering the hit and like getting the free rusher and accelerating the process so much as I just when you beat Goff, it's when you make the pocket muddy, right? If you think about that Texans game that the
Yeah.
Lions played,
All the interceptions.
it was right. It was just the ability to constantly have some heat somewhere on Goff, just somewhere on the burner, just somewhere off the
Yeah.
backside, behind him, in front of him. If he has to reset his feet, the more you get Goff to move his feet, just the more the timing of the game is going to get disrupted and the accuracy is going to get disrupted. That's how he gets up in these bad mistakes. And so to me, this is like a 4-man rush game. And I want to be able to look at John Grenard. I want to be able to look at Andrew Van Ginkel. I want to be able to look at Pat Jones and Dallas Turner, this depth at edge rusher, and say, all right, like Penny's great. Penny's been a problem. Taylor Decker is having the season that you kind of expect a 30-year-old tackle to start to have, right? I think that Taylor Decker is still a good player, but I think that there's some moments there where you kind of see the age catching up to him. Let's see if we can simulate a lot of pressure, bluff a lot of blitz looks, drop some guys into those quick throws, right? If we can if we can get those surprising droppers from the line, we can get a bad Goff play, but then let's also just rush with speed and let's try to make this guy feel the heat a little bit. Like that's where we can invite some mistakes. So I kind of want to turn the heat off on the blitz a little bit and simulate a lot more
Yeah.
pressure. I don't love how it feels, but I think that's the
No,
change.
no.
That's the change.
I think of a specific play in this game. Again, going back and rewatching, Grenard ran like a little pick stunt with Andrew Van Ginkel, and he came this close to strip sacking Goff. Do you
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
that? And
yeah,
and
yeah.
honestly, this was one of the moments of the season where Jared Goff just steps up and rips that thing, and this is a huge
Goff
part of
played
why
great in this game. He really
Goff's been
did.
awesome this year,
Yeah.
man. But moments like that, like he actually has really been a different quarterback under pressure. He has been so unfazed throughout most of the season. But I go back to that play, and like a play like that, you need to have, you got to get home a few times on those. And I think to your point, it's got to be probably Grenard is their best rusher.
Mhm.
You just, yeah, I think this Lions team is too well equipped to beat you the way they normally do. And that's the other thing I'd love to see out of Brian Flores, by the way, is he is one of the play callers in the NFL. Obviously, he's awesome. We talk about it all the time, but he'll mix it up. He will flat out change up his tendencies, as we just saw against Green Bay. So they blitzed Jared Goff on the 55% of
Yeah,
dropbacks
it was
this
high.
last time. I would like to see him mix that up, maybe change
And
up
so
when you
much,
send
yeah.
pressure, maybe send less pressure, because I do think that chess match is how you want to steal a couple of possessions from Detroit. I think you do it by taking them by surprise.
Yeah. And so many of those blitzes are structural, right? Like whenever they go up against these under center teams, they just blitz the weak side linebacker constantly, right? They're trying to get you to slide
Yeah.
protection strong, then they send pace weak, and they send pace weak, and it's just structural. It's just the way that the defense is built, and it's like, all right, if there is a structural, if we get X and we do Y, I promise you, Ben Johnson has found it. I promise you, he has 19 different ideas on how to get after it. So you a little bit you want to strip things back down to the studs and reimagine a kind of bespoke, tailored Detroit Lions game plan, which is kind of how playoff football works. And this is playoff football, right? The winner of this game gets a bye and home field advantage in the
Yeah, we
NFC
probably
playoffs.
should
Like
have emphasized that at the beginning.
this is playoff the opposing the team who loses has to go on the road potentially for 3 straight games. Very, 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 very hard to do in the NFL playoffs. So this is playoff football. You kind of want to come out with a specific, like in week 7, it was week 7. Now this is winter football. We're walking out with just the Detroit Lions game plan, then we're going to come up with something next in a week or 2 weeks down the road.
My brother just texted me, "Wow, ASU." Sorry, that's why I was distracted. My
Okay.
brother is an ASU alum, by the way. So
Go
yeah.
forks up.
Forks up.
Forks up. Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but hopefully something. I mean, I'm just praying for this to be interesting. Oh wow, 24-22 with 5 minutes left.
Hey, no.
Okay.
I've said in the pre-show that this game better not get interesting, and now here we
Not
are. Things are interesting.
Okay, well, Vikings fans, if you're listening to this and you're annoyed because it sounds like we're favoring the Lions side of this, I have good news for you. The good news is your offense against the Lions defense.
Yeah.
Yo. Oh man, Dominique and I talked about this after the Lions Monday night win over San Francisco, but San Francisco was just moving the ball at will on them, and then they got a couple of turnovers, and that ended up being the difference. But it was not an I felt it was not an encouraging defensive performance by any means, and yeah, this is another one where, to a much more dramatic extent, everything that the Vikings do and have been doing well is just really a really difficult matchup for this Lions team. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you can't pressure, so the Packers pass rush I've been pretty low on, and I think that came to kind of fruition when they played the Vikings and made their offensive line look like the Great Wall of the North
Yeah.
in that last game. Well, this Lions pass rush without Aleem McNeil and obviously Aiden Hutchinson, woof woof, Ben. It is.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying. It's just not. It's just DJ Reader trying his best on it. Playing a lot, by the way. I feel like his snap count was very high on Monday. I am just, other than you're hoping you can have those sorts of turnovers and negative plays. I am not optimistic for this unit against Minnesota.
They have so many pocket pushers. DJ Reader pushing the pocket, Josh Pascal pushing the tackle, Levi Wuzurike just pushing a guard, and then there's nobody to get home. Right? It is all they can condense space, but they just struggle to win their one-on-ones. And that's why you see them blitz so much. Right? It's funny. In the first game, the Lions blitzed Darnold more than the Vikings blitzed Goff. Right? The Lions have been one of the heaviest blitzing teams pretty much since like October, but certainly since the injury started really piling up there in November. And this is Aaron Glenn, who says, who's an extreme, like, my way or the highway. We are going to be aggressive. We are going to stop the run. We are going to be +1 in the box. Like, I believe what I believe. Big people, guy for every gap. Let's go. And that has been, and the strength of the team has been the secondary for a lot of the injured process. And so it makes sense. Okay, like, we're going to live in cover
Safeties are
0.
good.
We're going to live in cover 1, right? We're going to have Terry Arnold, Carlton Davis. Like, we trust these guys on the outside. Now Carlton's down, right? And you got Kendall Vilder, and you got Amik Robertson playing like a significant number of snaps. Terry Arnold, who is a rookie and has some nice moments, and also has a lot of flags. Like, if they are as dedicated as they were in the first matchup, and as dedicated as they have been recently, to still adding guys to the rush to get after the quarterback, and adding guys to the box to defend the run, and living in islands on the back end, Justin Jefferson is going to have 224 receiving yards. Like, it is very, very dangerous if the Lions play the way they played against this Vikings offense.
I really love watching the way this Vikings offense attacks man coverage too. I mean, I think Kevin O'Connell, it's 24-24, by the way.
Is it?
I saw your eyes stray for a second. I was wondering if you could look at the score.
I was looking up DJ Reader's snap counts, which I will have you know was 70% in the last game.
Yeah, okay, good. Checks out. It felt that way. I think Kevin O'Connell is one of the most creative play callers against man coverage. It's part of the reason why they're so good. He's so good at the goal line, right? Because teams, you're effectively playing a lot of man coverage there. And obviously he has the greatest ingredients a chef could imagine. It's brutal. The other thing is, like, Addison and Jefferson, they got to draw the most DPIs in football, right? I don't have that on front of me either. Sorry.
It kind of drives me nuts. Jordan Addison gets short king favor drawing DPIs, where just because he's smaller, he falls over easier.
I know he really is. Yeah. But it's not dishonorable because he actually tries. No, he fights for the ball.
I will give you that, as opposed to an unnamed receiver on the Houston Texans who doesn't try to get to the ball and just flops over and gets DPIs, which drives me insane.
Jordan Addison, I've talked about. I really feel like has taken a leap this year to be, I don't know if he would be a good number one on another team, but he's now, for me, in this Devontae Smith, T. Higgins category. Obviously very different kinds of players, some more similarities to Devontae Smith, certainly than T. Higgins, where if you're facing a team with a really good corner one, you still feel really good about your ability to attack because of the matchups. I just think you remember him coming out of college, there were so many questions about whether he had the play strength. And this season, I think he has really taken a leap forward in terms of his physicality, because we already knew he had the size and the tracking ability, but he has, I think, had a really complete season.
Yeah, watching Addison is so fun because his contemporaries, Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, are both two guys. Like Hawkinson and Jefferson will elevate for any ball, jump into any kind of contested 50-50 situation, like limbs flying everywhere, landing on their heads. Like both those guys play that way. And then Addison goes to play that way. And you're like, no, not you. You shouldn't, don't, this is not for you. But it is, right? And he's able to make unbelievable acrobatic adjustments to the ball. I generally subscribe to the idea that you want to build a pass catching room with different bodies and different play styles, and you kind of have a guy who can win every single matchup and, kind of have a different orientation. What the Vikings have done with Addison is they basically said, all right, we have a discount Jefferson, right? In terms of the catch outside of the frame and the route running ability and the consistent hands. Like we have a guy who's just 80-85% our star guy. And what that allows them to do is you put him in stacks, you put him on opposite sides, you motion to do, you put him in a bunch. It's hard to tell who's going to run which route. There's a rep against the Cardinals that lives in my mind where they motioned into a stack and they both release vertically, and someone's breaking out to the sidelines because they're in a 2-minute situation. One of the two is going out. It should be Jefferson, right? It absolutely unequivocally, that's the guy. That's the number one. He's the bucket getter. And it's Addison. He breaks into a lot of space and he gets an explosive game. They trust him to do everything they asked Jefferson to do in terms of the route tree and breaking guys off. And that's a rare thing, even among the top wide receiver duos.
That little hitch and go last week for the touchdown where I forget if he was inside or outside Addison in this, but like that, he really, it's going to be really interesting if they end up playing Philadelphia, where, you got obviously a really, really talented corner group. I'm excited to see how that shakes out. But I just don't think the Lions have enough back there. If you're Detroit, if I'm Aaron Glenn, obviously you want this, I know will be famous last words, but anytime Aaron Jones gets the ball, it's a win for you. Like you want them to run the ball.
They were good against the run in the first game as well.
Yeah, I think you just have to find a way to create chaos. Brian Branch is probably their best pass rusher at this point. You're sending him.
Wow, Zadarius Smith erasure. Zadarius Smith is also participating in the Zadarius Smith erasure, sadly. One thing I will say is this. I think that the Vikings walked down a lot of condensed sets, which is pretty standard for this offense at week 7. And I think that helped the Lions a lot. Because the idea is like bunches are going to make the man coverage tricky, and you're going to get some natural rubs and some natural picks. But you don't need those. Like it's not like you're losing in man coverage when you're spread out and then all of a sudden you're winning, because now you're already winning in man coverage. And that allows the Lions to disguise a lot more who's coming and who's covering. And that can get you some free rushers. I thought the Lions did a really nice job screwing with protection rules in the first game. They're getting a lot of free rushers down the pipe, right? They get you in a slide protection. They loop a guy through the slide, and they kind of get that pressure right in Sam's lap. If I'm Kevin O'Connell, I'm willing to live a little bit more in the spread and a little bit more in the gun in this game, and just say like, all right, like if you want to live gapped out, like I will just put 3 receivers on the field. I'll put Hawkinson in the slot. And like, obviously Sam's secret sauce right now in this Kevin O'Connell offense is the Jared Goff menu. It is the bootlegs, it's the under center play action, but Sam's playing well enough right now that you can spread and shred with him. He really, really is. And so to me, like that's where I'd want to go.
Thing about Sam Darnold too, where I just, I think I maybe didn't talk about this enough after the Packers game, because it really struck me. Mentally, he seems to have really taken a step this year. I was so impressed because the Jeff Hafley was throwing a lot of at the wall in that game in terms of mixing up his coverages, showing stuff pre-snap and then changing it post-snap. And it felt like Ben Darnold was arriving at the right answer every time. Like this isn't it. I really believe this, and this is obviously of note that he's a free agent and all the Shanahan guys are going to be looking at him. He is not what he is doing in this offense is not just point and shoot, right? He is actually making correct and aggressive decisions post snap, which is something we often don't see from quarterbacks in this offense. And I think that's a huge problem, not just for Aaron Glenn, but for anyone, because like that is an evolution in his game that a lot of, I mean, as much as I liked him, I didn't really see coming. I always liked his arm talent. I never thought like, oh, Darnold, he's going to take another step as a processor, but I really believe he has this year.
I'm somebody who was not in on Sam coming out of USC and was never in on Sam with the Jets. Not once. And I'm in on Sam. Like this is for real. Like you still want him to be in this sort of an offense. Like, don't get me wrong. This is not like, oh, you just do whatever he wants forever. You still want him to limit under center and the boot action and stuff. But like he's consistently accessing intermediate to deep backside routes. That's big boy stuff. That's grown up top button tie all the way up to the collar stuff like that. That is for real, capital F, capital R. It is a sight to see. It really is.
under pressure too. That's the other thing. Like
Yep.
even earlier in the season, he was a little bit erratic under pressure, and you saw some bad decisions and some
Yep.
bad sacks. And he has taken a step forward
And
in that
and this
regard
is
too.
where the little angry nerd in my head goes, well, under pressure is very erratic and is not consistent season to season, and probably he's going to have some more picks next year. But then there's a much larger football player in my head, not actually, but like don't worry about it. The arm is sick, and honestly, I think that's going to win out over time. He's playing with such confidence. So yeah, I want to see him outside of Minnesota because I think we learn a lot if we do. But even if like they trade McCarthy, which I would be trading McCarthy,
We don't have to get into that on this
I would do
podcast.
it.
Yeah. I mean, God, is this what it's like to have owned Nvidia like 4 years ago? Or I don't know what the comp is now for stocks, because I mean, listen, for those out there who believe in a quarterback, hold on to those shares.
Yep.
All it takes is time and landing in perhaps the best offensive landing spot of a free agent in recent history, because the Sam shares are high, and this matchup is why I'm taking the Vikings in this one. I
Yeah.
just think the Lions defense is just too up against it. I do think the Lions offense will have success. It was very obvious, I think, from our earlier conversation. I just have more faith in the Vikings defense to get a few of those stops we talked about than this Lions defense at this point.
I think Detroit wins. I think Detroit wins.
Woo!
The thing about this Lions
Go!
defense, which the Lions defense is not good, agreed, strong agree, but they're still so good against the run that it's a
Yeah.
hard defense to sit on a lead against. Because if you immediately enter, just clock management territory, they're going to be able to get more possessions on you. And even you saw it in that Niners game. All right, it's punch, 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 punch. Then it comes, all right, can we get one stop? And for a team that blitzes as much as the Lions do and plays the ball successfully, oftentimes they get that stop and they get that turnover. And so I like how Kevin O'Connell managed his late game situation, right? They threw the ball on that final drive against the Packers. I think you're going to need to do that again against Detroit, but you're just going to invite a lot of mistakes. And again, critically, on the road, right? A lot of procedural penalties for the Lions in the first game. That's going to be on the Minnesota side in this game. So I think Detroit, who, has been long eyeing this one seed all season, I think they don't let it get snuck from them. I think they know how desperately they need the bye. I think you see a real big performance from their group. So I'm taking Detroit.
Dominique and I talked about this. I was texting with you a little bit. Like, it's incredible how Detroit, with everything, all the injuries and the pressure, they still play so free. Like the trick play, like it really, there's nothing tight about this team, which is ridiculous, honestly, for a team in their position. I wouldn't be surprised if they pull this out. Okay, that was really long, but it's a really good game, guys.
All right.
Can they flex that game to the morning, afternoon, and night?
Just play it over the course of 12 hours.
Okay, so Saturday, the two games are meaningful and they're ordered for a reason. The Ravens are facing the Browns, a Browns team that has nothing to play for and is starting. It's still Dorian Thompson-Robinson, right?
Yes, that's the anticipation. Yep.
Okay, so we don't need to talk about that. We could talk about Bengals Steelers though, because both teams do have something to play for. The Bengals are still fighting for the playoff lives. They need Carson Wentz, who holds the fate of multiple playoff teams in his hands, to do them a favor. I'm not even going to try to project what a Carson Wentz offense looks like. We're not doing it. And the Steelers, as you were just pointing out to me, there's an incentive. I would say there's two incentives to play. One, you vastly prefer having the 5 seed to the 6 seed, because the 5 seed means you're going up against Houston as opposed to a rematch with Baltimore. We've all been watching the Houston Texans late. But Ben, I would argue another reason why the Steelers need this game is there's a opportunity to put some mouthwash on this offense, because the offense has looked horrible over the last few weeks. And the Cincinnati Bengals defense, well, they put up 44 points on them last time they played. They were awful. So I revisited my notes from that game, and I just a bunch of puking emojis around the Bengals defense. Russ threw for 414 yards. They hunted Josh Newton. He allowed 121 yards as the nearest defender.
What?
The thing that was notable about this game, though, and I think will continue to be, so Russ typically this season has been a little bit of a single high merchant, as he has, in recent years. That's where they're able to hit those explosives to George Pickens. But uniquely in this game, he was actually very effective against the Bengals split safety. And the reason why he was effective is because, oh my God, these linebackers were horrendous in this game. Logan Wilson was out. He will be out. So we're talking about Akeem Davis-Gaither and Jermaine Pratt. And Russ correctly just went after them, just check down. And the number of tackles missed in this game, that limit does not exist. So from Pittsburgh's side, I see no reason why. I know that the Bengals defense had a better performance as of late, but I feel like similar game plan, similar opportunity, and this could be really helpful for them to just kind of at least build some momentum headed into the postseason.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about the Steelers offense in this late stage Russell Wilson era, we've largely been like, all right, how good is the matchup for George Pickens? If good, then good for Steelers. If bad, then bad, right? It's very, very silent for the offense. There might be like 3 defenses in the league that the Steelers have a good matchup against where like Pickens isn't the central point, and this Bengals defense is one of them because the Steelers just have big dudes who are hard to tackle, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren's a headache, and Pat Fryermuth and Darnell Washington and the tight end targets, and the Bengals just don't tackle. They just don't play
Yeah.
well in space. They do not bring guys down. And so Russ, who has blossomed beautifully into this, I will throw the running back check down early quarterback, right? Finally, for years we've been asking him, like, let's develop new skills in this late stage of our career. He's gotten this now with Arthur Smith and in Pittsburgh for whatever reason. But that's going to be able to work really well against Cincinnati because they're going to play all their zone coverage and play all their match stuff.
Yeah.
You're going to throw the ball to Jalen Warren. He's going to get one blocker in front of him. He's going to pick up 8 or 9 yards a pop. Like that's going to be fairly free for you. Fryermuth had a great game in this one. I remember texting you after this game because like the first few Russell Wilson games were kind of like, all right, it's Russ doing Russ stuff. Like we are Russing over here. I remember texting you after this game, like, okay, he gets this one. Like this is what I'm starting to see what the vision is and what the transition is going to look like. Now, Cincinnati's defense has been playing more impassioned football as of late, but the personnel is still like it, right.
The linebackers are
it's
just
extremely reliable. So yeah, you expect another high scoring game. The Pittsburgh thing, man, like the moment they got me being like, yeah, maybe they're actually good. They lose 3 straight games against playoff teams. But if you go and you look, like they didn't have Joey Porter Jr., they didn't have Dante Jackson, they didn't have Deshaun Elliott. TJ Watt is clearly gimpy. They're missing Pickens on offense. Like we've got a Steelers team on a 3-game losing streak and a Bengals game on a 4-game winning streak with the playoffs in sight. Like it feels like the arrows are pointing in different directions, but Pittsburgh's getting healthier and they're a dramatically different team when Pickens and when Joey Porter Jr. are available. So I lean Pittsburgh in this one, and I lean Pittsburgh still as like a legitimate can win an AFC playoff game team so long as they're at full strength.
Najee Harris had 68 yards after the catch. Jalen Warren had 54 in this game.
So that's over 110 yak for 2 running backs. It's not a good look, man.
Multiple Steelers averaged over 10 yards after the catch per catch. So it's just stupid. Man. The other thing, yeah, I hear you about the health. It was interesting going back and watching some of Burrow's big plays in this one because obviously, he put up a lot of, I mean, it was 44-38, right?
Mm-hmm.
He did a really, really nice job of layering the ball over the second level defenders. And he was working the seams against this defense really well. He's obviously talked about this. Steelers defense is vulnerable to quick game, which of course Joe Burrow is awesome at. That would concern me. I think they have the ability to beat them defensively without even getting that, or offensively, pardon me, without getting that many explosives because of the way the Steelers defense is weak. Part of me leans Cincinnati just because there's something about this like Burrow Higgins chase last dance that like feels unstoppable at the moment. But I guess the other side, it's just, it is hard to anticipate a different result for this Bengals defense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think I'm going to go Bengals in this one, though.
Yeah. Bengals are favored on the road, right? And so
Yeah.
it is, kind of indexing for the last month or so. The Chase Brown health is very interesting to me because Chase Brown is expected to go in this game. How are we a go because we didn't actually get that hurt, or are we a go because week 18 and the season's on the line, right? That's it was initially looked at as like a high ankle sprain. He was do not practice on Wednesday, the day that we're recording. But again, they're trying to make sure he goes. If you have a limited Chase Brown, you have nothing in the running game. It's Khalil Herbert against an extremely bad interior offensive line against a still very, very, very good Steelers defensive line. And we are dealing with the inability to tempo the game at all, the inability to manage a lead. Chase Brown out of the backfield has been a big deal for them, right? In terms of
I was just about to say, and that,
game,
especially against this Pittsburgh defense, you want to use your backs as pass catchers.
Herbert
is good in that regard.
Yeah, if you think you've seen one-sided Bengals offense before, tune in on Saturday for a non-Chase Brown Bengals offense. It's going to be 85% drop back. And just when an opposing defense knows you are stuck in drop back, you become a lot easier to stop. And so I lean Steelers, but the Brown health is big.
All right. That's it for the games. Like I said, we're not going to try to preview Carson Wentz versus the Denver Broncos. I do you think that let's just really quickly hit it.
We're not going to do it.
However, will he? Because I definitely think they're going to try. Although there is the whole like galaxy brain. Do you want to let the Bengals into the playoffs?
I think that's nonsense. People are like, the Chiefs are scared of the Bengals. Dude, the Chiefs are like 15-1 without a good offense. The Chiefs fear no man.
Okay. That said. Oh, do you have your little Omaha tumbler?
I do have my Omaha tumbler. A little product placement.
Perfect for this pod.
Yeah, because I was thinking of my green tea, trying to not lose my voice.
I could see the Chiefs, I could see the offense trying with Wentz. I don't think they'll have their usual, obviously, a ton of success against this Broncos defense in particular, a motivated, angry, aggressive Broncos defense. I just don't see it. That's my thought. So I don't think the Chiefs win.
I have never been more confident in anything in my life than the Broncos beating the Carson Wentz-led Chiefs. It's gonna be a case in point argument from Mahomes as MVP for the rest of time. However, this will be a one-score game at some point in the fourth quarter. Inevitably, some Chiefs nonsense will occur, and this will be 13-19 with Carson Wentz having the ball. I promise you that will happen.
All right, that's it for the games. As promised, we are going to go through all the non-playoff teams. We spent 40 minutes on those games. So we're going to go pretty quickly through these. Some of them, honestly, are just so dumb and obvious. We don't even have to really get into it. Let's alternate AFC, NFC. Let's do a few before we take a break. I will go first. I'm NFC or AFC.
Yep.
Did you, by the way, do ones for the teams that are technically still in it?
I have quick ones down for Cincinnati and for the Dolphins,
Miami,
who we expect not to make it. Broncos, it'll be whatever happens in the Carson Wentz game that we'd have to talk about.
Okay, Cowboys, I'll go first. Cowboys. I wrote, so this is, again, the biggest reason why, there's obviously lots of reasons, your team is not in the postseason. I wrote offensive infrastructure. You could obviously point to the fact that they lost their quarterback, Dak Prescott. I do not believe this team would be a threat, however, with Dak Prescott. And I think it's hard. You can't pinpoint one thing on the offense. It's kind of all of it, right? Mm-hmm. The offensive line took a step back. They didn't have enough skill players. They took way too long to go to Rico Dowdle, who very obviously should have been running back one all along. But one stat that's jumped out to me is, so Dak finishes the year with the highest tight window throw rate.
Yep.
Cooper Rush comes in at fourth.
Oh, fourth. Okay.
Second.
At one point in the season, he was second. I was just like, okay, so that's it.
But it's the offense. The offense sucks. The offense stinks. And they got to figure that out.
Yeah. The Mike McCarthy, Brian Schottenheimer offense, stop me here, is solved, right? We've kind of seen enough of this to know what we're going to get as a secondary. And then you introduce a lack of juice behind CeeDee Lamb, which I think, a lack of secondary and tertiary pass catchers can at times be overemphasized as an offensive problem. But when your guy is CeeDee Lamb, who inherently is not the biggest dude and should not take that many hits, it actually is a legitimate, you need somebody else to be working middle of the field, taking slants to protect CD for 18 games, this season being a good case in point. So yeah, I think that freshness of ideas and youth, right? They need younger, faster players on offense to give this Mike McCarthy, Brian Schottenheimer, brain trust a little bit more zip.
They simply can't. See what happens. I think running it back with this coaching staff would be a massive, massive mistake for this team. And obviously, defensive injuries factor in. There's a million reasons why they fell apart, but you cannot overlook how dated and unquarterback friendly this offense is. It's an offense that works if you have, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, which is probably the closest thing in the NFL, right?
And even then, Cincinnati's gotten much more with the times than the Cowboys have.
Yeah, true. Okay, AFC, your first AFC team.
Yeah, I went in ascending order of draft order. So I have the Patriots first on my list. This season did not go well because the offensive line sucks. I mean, it was just terrible. 14 different offensive linemen took snaps for the Patriots this year. At various times, they had Chukwuma Okorafor, who was supposed to start at left tackle, was benched in week 1 for playing badly, and then left the team. Star center David Andrews goes down on injured reserve. Cole Strange was on injured reserve for most of the season. They had to cut Nick Leverett during the season because he wasn't playing well. just Caden Wallace went down with injury. They had so many problems. They had constant musical chairs, especially at the tackle position. Once Drake May took over as the starter, we've talked about quick quarterback pressures a lot in this pod, under 2.5 seconds. Since week 6, when Drake May took over, quick 78 quick quarterback pressures, second only to Joe Burrow, who's got like 90 more dropbacks than he does. And so yeah, they untenable offense because of the offensive line, independent of who returns and doesn't return on the coaching staff and some of the sexy wide receiver free agent moves you can make. Offensive line needs multiple new bodies on it for sure.
That's a pretty clear one. The Giants, so many things with this team, obviously. Defense was not what the secondary. There's just major holes defensively.
Mm-hmm.
Their offensive line is also an issue, but this one I just wrote quarterback. I mean, it's just actually this might be the only team where I wrote like quarterback now looking down as like being the obvious issue. It's the number one problem. It was the number one problem from start to finish, and it's a problem that doesn't have an apparent solution. We talked about JJ McCarthy there. I floated a trial balloon Giants after Drew Lock won that last game and knocked them out of the 1 seed. I wrote Giants, JJ McCarthy collision course, and fans got mad at me. I was like,
Giants fans?
Some Giants fans liked it. A lot of Vikings fans got mad at me.
I think you can apply fourth down logic here, and if you poll Giants fans, who do you want more, JJ McCarthy or Sam Darnold? I think the majority of Giants fans would say they want Sam Darnold, not JJ McCarthy, which should tell Vikings fans what your team should do.
That's great.
Fourth down logic? You with me?
Yeah, I like that. No, I like that fourth down logic. That said, I JJ McCarthy to me, the thing that has been pointed out is they already passed on JJ McCarthy, and I think Joe Shane's going to keep his job, which, okay. They picked Neighbors over him. But man, I'll say this, like, Malik Neighbors. I do think there's actually like a decent amount of appeal for a quarterback there because of Neighbors, and the offensive line is a work in progress if you can get the right coach in place. And I don't know. I would rather have. I know he's coming off the injury. I would rather trade. I don't think you're going to get a first if you're Minnesota. But I would trade a second for JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
Would you do that if you're Minnesota?
What? Giants second is probably going to be what? Top 40, maybe top 35, 38-ish?
Yeah.
I feel like I can get a first from somebody. I feel like I can get some desperate like Raiders team, some desperate Titans team, but like I'll send
not
you
an early first.
Back. Yeah, probably not getting an early first, right? So maybe I have to do a couple more trades. Okay, maybe I'll take the early second, but I want to get greedy and I want to get the first round pick. That's yeah, exactly. That's the screen grab I want. Okay. I am very confident, given what I've seen from this entire class at the quarterback position, that JJ McCarthy is the best young quarterback option available in the 2025 NFL draft for sure.
All right, AFC, you're next.
All right, I have the Tennessee Titans, who actually, like, listening to your Giants explanation, is AFC Giants, right? A lot went wrong in terms of, the tackle play was still a big issue for them. Offensive line remained a big problem. And the wide receiver room, like, okay, the Calvin Ridley addition was nice and he had some good games, but in general, not a ton of talent there. And, whatever. But fundamentally, the issue is that they bet on Will Levis being good in year 2, and Will Levis was not good in year 2, right? 2 or 3 plays a game. My Will Levis interest is peaked. All right. We got a big throw over the middle, some arm strength, but generally the high sack rate into the high turnover rate with like a moderate big play rate is just simply not worth it. Far too many negatives in the risk reward matrix to justify any of the reward. And so they're a team that's looking for a quarterback in the upcoming seasons. And whether they figure that out this year with a rookie or with a free agent guy, whether that takes some time, in the meantime, you have to work on like execution and discipline. This was one of the most penalized teams in football. This team was terrible situationally, horrible on special teams. This is a very traditional, like, year 1 young team in a rebuild where they just knuckleheaded themselves into a lot of losses. They got a lot of work on.
Do you think Brian Callahan talks himself into any of the free agents, which would be Darnold, who is the creme de la classe?
Yeah.
Daniel Jones.
Which is
Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, I could 100% see Brian Callahan doing Aaron Rodgers for a season. Absolutely.
Behind that offensive line, that would be insanity.
Oh, look at my shotgun, read, adjust option routes off. Look at how smart we are on the chalkboard. Look at how many audibles we have. Loses the game 13-34. 100%. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers to the Titans is done in my mind.
Is he the most likely Or is that the most likely Aaron Rodgers?
I'm trying to think if he has any connections anywhere else.
Yeah, right.
No chance he's doing the Raiders because they're owned by Brady.
None of the Shanahan-y teams.
Yeah. Honestly, no, like Callahan, like, oh, Peyton Manning, oh, we're geniuses. Like, that's there. There's juice. We got a
Oh,
stew going.
Cousins. I should have mentioned Cousins too.
Okay,
Who's
well,
gonna
no.
All right.
Rodgers.
Let's take a quick break. Sorry, Titans fans. I am going to personally advocate for your team not to do that
A
as
lot
my
of
gift to you this offseason.
2022 Aaron Rodgers jersey edits, jersey swaps to get brush the dust off of those, pull those back out. Exciting stuff.
All right, coming back, I've got a lot of teams that do not need quarterbacks. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words, Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, we're back. Let's do the Niners first. I mean, it's injuries. There's problems with this team. There's questions going forward, but here's a list of the players who missed multiple games this year. Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, George Kittle, Ricky Pearsall, Nick Bosa, Travarius Ward, Javon Hargrave, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, now Brock Purdy.
Jeez. The whole team.
I remember going into the season being like, damn, they were really healthy last year. And they played a lot of football. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think it would be like, I mean, God. Crazy.
Yeah. They were an enormous favorite to win their division again coming into the season. And I took so much Seahawks and so much Cardinals and no Rams, which I'm fine with. I totally feel good about that. But it was the issue is when you play a 2021 game season and you're already a bit of an older team, already a bit of a banged up team. Yeah, you can look great on paper, but the water gets into the cracks of the foundation, right? That is the nature of injury and the accumulation of hits. Ask any one of those guys you named, right? Hufanga and Greenlaw with their play style. Obviously, Greenlaw got hurt running onto the field, but still. Ask McCaffrey playing the running back position. Brock Purdy with his size in the pocket. Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle with the hits he has to take over the middle of the field in this offense. Like, this is the nature of football, and certainly the nature of a team like the Niners who are trying to max out a contending window. And so, yeah, there's so much less to be learned from this Niners collapse than people want there to be. There's just conclusions being drawn everywhere. And really, it's just like, man, welcome to the NFL. Sometimes you lose the season to injury.
Yeah, especially if it's in large part because you've played so many more games than every team but the Chiefs. You made the NFC Championship 4 or 5 seasons before this. Some of the Niners talk is madness. Upside is I actually think this year's rookie class does look better, certainly than the prior year. Jake Moody stares in. But Pearsall, Renardo Green, Dominic Puny, Gorendo. You got like contributors.
Malik Mustafa, yeah. When you brought up Moody, when Kyle trotted Moody out for the second 50-plus yard field goal against the Lions.
The 58-yard field goal? What was that? I regret not hitting that. Oh my God. I'm looking at the 2002 class. Drake Jackson, Davis Pratt. Like this was John Lynch.
for pod only listeners, that wasn't funny. For YouTube watchers, we made the exact same John Lynch face at the
Niners drafts, and this probably should be talked about more.
The problem,
also obviously,
here's my issue with Lynch. Lynch so clearly gets what Shanahan needs on offense and what the defense needs. Like they draft the same sorts of players in terms of the wide receivers that they bring in and like some of the safeties that they draft, like the defensive line guys for Chris Kosar. There's clearly a oneness of mind that I think is generally healthy and good and the correct way to build a contender. And then what's the rule of the draft? Don't look at small samples. Sometimes you miss on picks, like it's a lottery, whatever. With that said, it would be very nice if we had acquired a high impact player in the draft in the last 5 years with an early pick.
Yeah,
Bosa's the last one. Otherwise, it's been free agents and it's been trade acquisitions. That is a long time for a team that wanted to contend.
Who's the best draft pick? Lenoir? The last 5 years I'm looking at.
Oh, all of his round 5 picks are killer. Greenlaw, Elmer Lenoir, Talanoa Hufanga was a late round guy. Jawan Jennings, round 7. All the late rounders are killer. But again, to me, like when a late rounder is good, that's coaching, right? That is development. That is, this guy fits our system. I can find a role for him. The early round guys, you're supposed to just be able to be better than the league at finding talent, finding guys who are impact players. And they have just whiffed and whiffed and whiffed more. And
Yeah.
obviously they haven't had that many picks because of the Trey Lance deal. And so, that colors this a little bit as well.
Oh, but it doesn't matter. Okay, back to you.
Oh, okay. My next team is the Browns. I had the top 3 teams in the draft order, by the way. Patriots, Titans, Browns, as it's currently projected. Why was the Browns season bad? Because the quarterback that they paid $1 bajillion to is bad. Like it's obviously very, very simple. They were 1-6 when Deshaun Watson was out there. They were very clearly happy to go down with the ship with Deshaun Watson. He's going to be our starter forever. Why would you say he's a problem? What are you talking about? This is not an issue. Once Watson goes down with the popped Achilles, Winston steps in. They certainly score more points, but they're still 2-5 in the Jameis Winston era. And that's because of defensive regression, right? This was a really, really, really good defense last year who brought in a lot of the same players, but they play a very feast or famine style of defense, right? It's going to be all about the 4-man rush. It's going to be a lot of single high, a lot of man coverage. And when Greg Newsome and Martin Emerson, your 2 corners opposite Denzel Ward, kind of step back over the course of the season, you give up a lot of explosive plays, right? They were 3rd in defensive success rate, 13th in EPA per play, one of the highest explosive run rates and pass rates surrendered among defenses this year. And so obviously we saw like bad quarterback play, bad Deshaun Browns in 2023, still make the playoffs. Like, okay, why couldn't they do that in 2024? It's because it's really hard to replicate defensive success year over year. So that was kind of the difference maker in the non-Deshaun aspect of the Browns football. Still fundamentally, why were the Browns bad this year? Because Deshaun's bad.
Cam Ward, Cleveland Brown.
Oh, I mean, yeah, like they have to go rookie contract for the next one, for the next quarterback, because they're paying Deshaun into 2029 now at this point. So yeah, I mean, like I would. That feels very Browns coded, right? Just like take the risk on the rookie quarterback, throw the Flyers, whatever. Yeah, I see that.
All right, back to the NFC West. I'll go Cardinals next. This is an interesting. So again, the conceit is like, why are your team not in the playoffs? Well, the worst part of the team is the lack of pass rush. So I could easily point to that. Pass rush was good, but I actually think like this defense really outkicked their coverage. I want to come up with my own term for that because I don't like that term because
it doesn't totally make sense. But it's so football-y, so you got to use it.
Yeah. I'll come up with something. I actually think the teams played pretty damn well the second half of the season, honestly, all things considered. And you got some nice improvement from young players, too. Your Williamses, your Meltons, your Collinses, all that. Pass rush is still the major thing, and they have to obviously throw resources. I just wrote lack of offensive consistency. I find the Cardinals offense to be the most frustrating to talk about in all of football because there are some offenses and quarterbacks where I can just say they're good, they're bad. Here's the problem. This is where they need to get better. And I feel like I can't do that with the Arizona Cardinals, Ben, because they were all over the place. Like there were moments where I genuinely believe Kyler Murray looked like one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football. There were moments, including the final game of the season, by the way, where Marvin Harrison Jr. last game looked like Marvin Harrison Jr. We thought he was going to be. He was so good in Week 17 against the Rams. Like you saw the whole route tree, the crossers, all of it. There were moments where the run game was dominant, but it wasn't consistent enough. So I just wrote the lack of consistency. And I think, they're going to run it back with Kyler next year. They don't really have a choice. I feel like if you can't get consistency from him, right? And I'm not even talking like, every 17 game. I'm talking about like just long stretches of good play. You probably have to move on because that's the only way I can characterize what went wrong for them.
Yeah. I remember mid-season when that offense was picking up and you were going through the Kyler numbers and he was 26th in the league in EPA per play unpressured and first in the league EPA per play pressured. And it was like, all right, that is bad because you just pressure play cannot be consistent game to game, right? That's where you get that high vacillation you were talking about where every single Thursday I can't figure out what the Cardinals are going to do on Sunday. It's because Kyle's going to get pressured on 14 dropbacks. So he's going to throw 12 times for 3 touchdowns or he's going to take 4 sacks, right? Everything, all of our eggs are in a highly volatile basket, right? The base offense in Arizona has to be better. They walked into the season really thinking we can run the ball so goddamn well that we just do not need a base passing game. We just be all shots and all like screens and all like this, and everything will be an extension off the running game. It is 2024, man. We have to be able to drop back and win, especially if we have a second contract quarterback. And part of the increase in targets for James Conner, part of the change usage for Marvin Harrison, part of the explosion of Trey McBride was this young offense figuring that out as the season went, but it was far too little, far too late. And so like Drew Petzing, who I think is a smart cookie in terms of like, look at this cool running game. Like they do stuff from like under center with pullers and shotgun with pullers. Like they do a lot of cool stuff. But you can't miss the forest for the trees. It can't be look at this cool
Right.
stuff I do. It's got to
It
be there.
can't
A
all be
holistic
based on
offensive game. Yeah.
like the idea that like teams are going to be so scared of our passing defense that we're going to be able to, or prime rushing attack, that we'll be able to take advantage of all those stack boxes and all those base personnel groupings, and then we're going to have one-on-ones. Well, that's not enough.
You get to do that if you have the Eagles offensive line and Saquon Barkley, right? You have to be superlative in every aspect.
They're just good at running. They're not
exactly
there.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's that's why whenever people ask me like about the Cardinals what went wrong, I always had trouble to it was like a few things. It was, I think, a little bit of it was inconsistency from Harrison Jr., from Kyler, from Petzing, kind of the whole thing. So it's a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
Who got next?
Jaguars for me, 4-12 right now, 5th in the draft order. What went wrong for the Jaguars? Everything.
Yeah.
I went back and I looked weeks 1 through 9. So this is when Trevor Lawrence was healthy. They were on offense, 17th in EPA per play, 14th in success rate. The way people talk about Trevor now is like, how could this offense? It was criminal. It was so bad. They were like mid, and they were mid in terms of our advanced metrics. They were -7 in turnover differential. They were 29th in red zone
overtime. Sorry, ASU Texas went to overtime. Keep going.
Yeah. -7 in turnover differential, 29th in red zone scoring rate, 30th in third down conversion rate, 32nd in third and short conversion rate. This team was awful situationally. They would play regular football games for 55 minutes, and then for the 5 minutes that mattered, where the points actually sat on late down conversions in the red zone, they were abysmal. Also during the Trevor stretch, defensively, right? Tyson Campbell goes down. They're not getting high impact from Josh Hines-Allen. They're having no good play defensive tackle. They're 31st in EPA per play on defense, giving up the highest explosive play rate in football. The Jaguars were so circle the wagonsable, right? It was so like a good head coach at the helm. Like we need to execute a little bit better. Like guys, we were on the right track, whatever. And at no point were the wagons circled, right? Doug Peterson never had a good handle on this team. They continued to have these embarrassing losses week over week. There was clearly frustration in who was calling the plays and kind of who was, what was being asked of Trevor Lawrence and where were the pass targets going and so on and so forth. And then it just became way too late. And so this was a classic example of like a team with high expectations coming bad out of the gate and then just imploding over the first couple months of the season.
Is Trent Baalke actually going to keep his job?
It's Trent Baalke. That's what Trent Baalke does. All right, the general manager of a football team, his second highest priority. You just saw the quarterback scramble. Second highest priority for the
team.
The second highest priority for a general manager of a football team is to win the Super Bowl. What's the number one highest priority? Keep the job. And Trent Baalke is a master at keeping the job.
God, that blocking. All right. Speaking of blocking, the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh no.
I mean, it's, like some of them are hard, right? Like the Jags, what do you even choose? It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Cardinals, the offense, difficult to diagnose what went wrong. Like it's very nuanced and confusing. It's not hard to figure out what the problem is with the Seattle Seahawks. Here's where Geno Smith ranks in quick pressure rate over the years. 2022, 12th. To a quick pressure in 2.5 seconds or less. Pretty good way of diagnosing if it's the offensive line. 12th in 2022. So it was not the best, but there was functional offensive line play during the Geno comeback season. 2023 rises to 5th. He's facing the 5th highest quick pressure rate in football. 2024 jumps up again to 3rd. Geno wasn't perfect. There's issues with Ryan. We could talk about the play calling, but I am so freaking sick of watching horrible offensive line play in Seattle. John Schneider. It's been years at this point, and it literally, and they have directed some resources towards it, although I would maintain not enough in free agency. It's gotten worse. Just worse to the point where the offense became non-functional at points, Ben. Like, there's literally just nothing you can do. Geno is being pressured instantly on early downs, too. It was just,
You have like white mom at like a school board meeting energy, right? And energy right now, right? Where like, something's been going wrong and like the curriculum of the school, this, everything. You got like graphs, you got like levels that's fired up. I'm loving it. You mad at the homeowners association for something? It's good.
I'm just I saw like people arguing about whether Mike McDonald, and look, Mike McDonald came in, he turned that defense around, right? I don't have the EPA per play. I know they finished top 10 in most advanced metrics by the end of the year, which is if you watch this defense at the end of last year when they were bottom 5, massive turnaround, Ben. Like there's still work to be done. Some personnel, they want to add players, made some changes at linebacker, we'll see. But they turned around the defense. I feel good about the direction of this team. The Seattle Seahawks are not in the playoffs because of their offensive line. That's it. Yep. That is why. It is very simple.
And I think about this Washington Commanders team, and I think one of the things you hear football nerds say a lot on podcasts is like, offensive line is a weak link system. If you can go get 5 average starters, you can have a pretty good offensive line. You don't need stars. And then like, we're afraid of what that actually looks like in practice. And this Commanders team, like they paid Andrew Wiley and Nick Allegretti and they played Tyler Biadasz. And we were all like, those are decent contracts for maybe like not star players. But you just saw that the floor of the offensive line gets raised and how much that helps the offense. It's like, all right, that's the model Seattle needs to follow. I don't need you to go pay 5 years, $100 million for Robert Hunt the way the Panthers did. Just go get some dudes who can play.
I do not trust John Schneider's ability to evaluate offensive linemen in free agency. Lincoln Tomlinson? Connor Williams was okay, and then obviously he retired mid-season, so you can't account for that, right? But I'm just sick of it. That's all. Do you know how unpleasant it is to watch a team with a bad offensive line year after year? No, you don't, because you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan.
Sometimes what happens, like, I don't know if this happens to Seattle. Sometimes one of the offensive linemen loses like a pass block, and then one of the defensive players gets through, and then the quarterback's got to move. Is that what happens in Seattle too? I see it occasionally.
Eagles fans got mad at me for being. I made a comment about how they've not watched bad offensive line play in years or something, and they were like, "Were you discounting Jalen Hurts or something?" And I almost lost it. Okay, that's it for Seattle. I don't think there's anything else to be discussed there. Back to the AFC.
All right, my next team is the Jets, 7th overall in the draft order right now at 4-12. For my what went wrong answer, I have Rajas, but written the way that the discount double check guy used to say it. Rajas, right? With no R's. Yeah. Anyway, they put all their eggs in the basket of a 40-year-old quarterback, and in the thought that he might have 2 or 3 elite seasons left in him, maybe 1 or 2 elite seasons left in him. And then obviously 2023, he pops the Achilles. And in 2024, he comes back and just the lack of arm talent, right? The lack of accuracy. I saw there was a throw to Kenny Yeboah where he got frustrated with Yeboah where he was on the move, and it's just like the ball dies on him. Like the quarterback should be able to hit that throw, and that happens so regularly, right? He's missing Garrett Wilson in the end zone, and he's doing the same picking and choosing with his receivers, but because he can't make it right with accuracy and with elite play, it's just all right. Like you put all of your eggs in that basket, and then you continue.
Oh, yeah, Texas scored. Sorry,
on 4th and 8. They had him. So you put all your eggs in that basket, and that's more than just like, this is our star quarterback, but it's also our offensive coordinator hire is going to be predicated on who this guy is. We're going to make free agent acquisitions and trade acquisitions based off of who this guy is, right? They continue to kind of double down on a hand that they thought was the nuts, and it wasn't. And so that's how you end up with a spiraling season like this.
Could I do a toxic take?
Yes, please.
Okay, so there's been all this great Jets reporting from Diana Rossini at The Athletic, and it's all been, by the way, proven correct. And Jets fans have gotten mad at her for saying like there's internal strife, and it's not internal anymore. Like you have Sauce Gardner openly telling Higgins, "Don't come to the Jets, bro." Like it is in the IG comments. Garrett Wilson is, and hopefully getting Rodgers out of the building will repair some of that. And to your point, so it's not, I think. There's still good young players on the Jets or whatever. Okay, so
yes.
There was a Diana story. I think it was right when Saleh was fired, maybe, or was not long after, where she and Zach Rosenblatt is the name of the Jets reporter.
Yeah, Zach's the man. He used to be on the Eagles beat.
Reported that Woody Johnson floated the idea of benching Rodgers for Tyrod Taylor, and at the moment, people posted that like, "What a clown, Woody Johnson, you fool."
Mm-hmm. Woody Johnson's had one good football idea the last 4 years. It was that. Woody Johnson watched the film, figured it out. Ty God, man.
Was that Brick? Maybe that one that might have come from Brick though.
It might have been Breck. Breck was playing low college football 25. Got an old Tyrod Taylor team. Poured it in.
Tyrod
Downloaded the
coming
cash.
in and immediately scoring 2 touchdowns just against the Bills. Inject it. Inject it, all of it.
Rodgers precludes you from running so many offenses
So
that are
much
good
fun.
because he refuses to act the way that you need your quarterback to act to run them. It's very sad. So yeah, there was a report today that like Rodgers and Devontae are both like not going to come back to the Jets, and it's like yeah, like you need to start fresh, and it's going to take time. But this is what happens when you invest all those eggs in the one basket. It takes some time to recover.
I got the Panthers.
Oh, it's a weird one.
I think this was pretty clear. The defense just isn't. They just don't
Yeah.
have enough players. We'll have time this offseason to kind of revisit what we've seen these last few weeks from Bryce Young. But what we have seen is a quarterback that you feel decent about going into next season with at minimum, right? So, which is a great situation for the Carolina Panthers because you don't want to be in the quarterback market next year. And I think you have so many other needs on this team. So being like, hey, we've saw enough out of Bryce. Let's see what we got next year as we continue building it. That's a good place for the organization to be. I think you feel good about your coaching staff, the culture that you're building, etc. This defense, I was watching last week. Like they're just, it's. There's players whose identities I would say the vast majority of NFL fans have not heard of. All 3 levels, you got issues. I wrote though just pass rush this offseason.
Yep.
32nd in pass rush win, 32nd in pressure rate. Like it was terrible against the run too, by the way. But it was just untenable. Oh, they hit the 2-point attempt, Texas. Just an untenable situation. So it's a great. By the way, I think it's like you're heading into a quarterback draft or a draft. Pardon me. That I haven't studied it. Is good with pass rush. You've got some money to spend. It'll be interesting to see who's available to them. But yeah, I would just say the defense wasn't talented enough, and they can rectify that.
Yeah. JC Horn is up. This one, he's on his 5th-year option next year. Okay, so they get another year, JC. Horn's
He
had
was
good.
okay this year. Took a step back, I thought.
I thought he played well this year. I think that you live with some of the bad that you're going to get from JC Horn. That was the case
Yeah.
when he was before the injury, when he came out of South Carolina, and so on and so forth. I like a JC Horn. The linebacking injuries has been absurd. But yeah, I think we knew this Panthers defense was going to be kind of toothless coming into the season. I don't mind going into next year with Bryce and figuring out what that looks like. I do worry that at the end of next season, we're like, well, turns out they needed to move on from Bryce, and you kind of just burned a little bit of clock. It burned some time, but
Yeah, but
it's not like you have that many
weren't.
young players. Yeah,
But it's not like there's good options this offseason. I think that's part of
yeah,
the
it's
other
true.
reason why. You know what I mean? Like if it was, let's say they were going into this last year's draft, and I think we would have a much more spirited conversation about what we saw from Bryce Young. And like, let's say you're looking at your Drake Mays, your Jaden Daniels, your Caleb Williamses in the draft, but
Yeah,
that's just not this draft. So I think it actually is lining up well for
I
them
see.
to
No, I
figure it
agree with
out a
you. I
little
see what
bit.
you're saying. Yeah.
Okay, you go next.
Yeah, my next team is the Raiders. Current 4-12, currently 8th overall in the draft position. I mean, like, what was supposed to go good? Right? What was hightail outcome here? Right? What was ceiling
I
outcome?
thought the defense would be better. I think that
Yeah.
was probably the
So like
biggest disappointment.
defense, Patrick Graham have some strength. Gardner Minshew is a steady veteran quarterback presence. Antonio Pierce keeps the team galvanized. Devontae Adams stays here and wants to play and whatever. I think that probably what went worst is the Pierce thing, right? We're just like without the interim bump.
Yeah.
The bad game manager stuff, which we already knew about, becomes a lot more glaring. The idea was he was a player's coach and could really get the guys going. And like there was a lot of frustration with personnel, right? His kind of the way he's handled the quarterback situation has been like, well, all my guys are bad. Like, it's not been the Devontae Adams, hamstring injury into leaving thing. Like maybe Devontae was always going to leave, but also like he wasn't able to solve that problem. And so you just don't really have the juice necessarily at head coach that you were hoping to have when you brought in a guy like Pierce. And I think that trickles down into like a defense that probably could have performed better, but just was kind of sick and tired of playing, bad football and being constantly put into bad drives and bad field position by a bad offense. Like there's kind of a cascading effect there. So with the Raiders, it's bleak, but it's been bleak there for a bit.
Yeah, I think they'll probably move on this offseason. Hard for me to imagine him surviving this because of all the reasons that you outlined, right?
Mhm.
Like there's bad teams and there's bad teams who are also clearly making coaching and game management mistakes week after week. See what they do at the quarterback positions. Obviously, You know, you hit Bauer's pick's unbelievable. You've got some good young players on both sides of the ball, I do believe. So it's an interesting destination. Oh, was he
GG's.
intercepted? Oh, it's over.
GG's.
Texas wins. Damn it.
Horns down.
All right.
Forks up.
Congratulations to Texas. The Saints. I'm up for the Saints. I just wrote the defense got old and you didn't have enough young players rise up, which is, I mean, you, obviously the quarterback position, you know, Derek Carr's hurt, you're rolling out Spencer Rattler, there's issues with the offensive line, all of that. But like this defense week after week, it's not just that they're old, like they look old, like, right? Just they look slow, they're missing tackles, they're not getting enough pass rush. It was all very predictable. But I think what's so disappointing is like the young rushers you've drafted in early rounds just haven't panned out. I actually liked Brian Bresee the year before, but he really took a step back this year, not getting anything out of Turner, Foskey. They made bad decisions too, like with the guys they've let walk, Caden Ellis, Zach Bond. I mean, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
This is one where like we talked about Trent Baalke, like Mickey Loomis. Dude, they have to move on.
He's immortal.
But they won't.
Yeah,
he's immortal. But like
the whole thing that like
what
he
I just
basically
said,
owns
even
the
the
team.
less, I know, but what I just said, like the first round picks from previous years, and then the guys they've let walk. He's made so many. Forget the weird ways they manage the cap and all the kicking they can. Just look at the players, right? Like he has chosen poorly.
Mm-hmm. Their last few years, man. The 2023 draft is Brian Bresee into Isaiah Foskey into Kendra Miller, who like Dennis Allen kind of hated Kendra Miller for some reason, but still,
that was a great bit. Yeah.
This past year was Talise Fuaga and Kool-Aid McKinstry, and then obviously they had no
better
picks, right? Whatever.
I think better.
The Chris Olave 2022 first overall pick is great, but behind it is Trevor Penning and Alontae Taylor. Before that, Peyton Turner, Pete Werner was good. Paulson Adebo, like, yeah, it's not an overwhelming list of success at draft capital, but like if you can't ever do mid-tier free agents, which they can't because of the way they manage the cap, then you can never plug the gaps that you don't know you have, right? When you draft, like, all right, you know, this guy will step in for that guy after next year, whatever. But at some point it's like, oh shoot, we need a guard and we don't have a guard in the hopper. Well, when you do not have mid-tier free agent money, that guard becomes Lucas Patrick, and that's not where you want to be as a team, right? That's you can't cycle in NFL caliber bodies to immediately plug your short-term gaps the way that you need to when you decide to run your team like this. And you know, it was defensible for a period of time, and then it became indefensible, and then it became absurd, and now it's just otherworldly what they've done with their money at this point.
Guard in the hopper. I like the idea of like a little Bunsen burner. You got a little guard warmed up, ready to go. Okay, who you got next?
My next team is the Colts, who are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs because they lost to the New York Giants. Drew Lock.
Is your answer that they don't show up on time?
Listen, we all struggle to show up on time, and timeliness is hard. Which like
you usually beat me to recording, so
it's so like it is both true what Shane Steichen said. Sometimes people are late. We should be gracious to people, and also the most unfootball coach thing I've ever heard.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that? You would say that.
When you are 11-1, you get to say that sometimes people are late. Anything worse, and you cannot say that, especially not. We just gave up 1.2 EPA per dropback to Drew Lock. It's the second best game in like the history of NGS or something. Anyway, the Colts failed to make the playoffs because of bad management across the board, right? I think that from a front office perspective, their fan base was begging, Chris Ballard, okay, let's get in some outside talent. Let's sign a couple big free agent deals or two. Let's add anybody to the secondary. And all they did was re-up. All they did was re-sign their own guys, kept the internal draft and develop. They believe in that so strongly there that they kind of never cash in on free agent classes, never plug immediate needs. They're just kind of always hoping their next guy up is gonna fill the spot for them. And then from a coaching perspective, and you can maybe fold general managing into this, the Richardson benching kind of didn't help anything. He's the same player he was before the benching, after the benching, and certainly I think a big part of the reason why they didn't make the playoffs because Richardson didn't improve as much in year two as you'd like for him to, right? His play is so extremely up and down even as he gains experience. And then they still had their chances, right? They still were there late. They're 4-6 after Richardson comes back from the Flacco period, and they still have a shot at the playoffs. And the Texans aren't that great. Maybe we can get back into the division. They're there against the Broncos after the bye week, what should have been a season deciding game. And Jonathan Taylor drops the ball at the 1, and then a double pass goes pick 6. Like they were poorly. The leaders of the team, general manager, head coach, Jonathan Taylor, whatever have you, did not make good plays, good decisions in good moments, and they lost a lot of leverage in those instances. And so, yeah, that's what you get, a close playoff loss, or a close failure to make the playoffs, because you're a good team with some good pieces, but overall, like, your key decision makers didn't succeed in their key spots.
Chris Ballard. I know I keep firing GMs as we go through all these. I feel like I fired like 4 of them. But we keep naming GMs who are like, even though I'm mad at, I don't think are gonna get fired.
Hmm.
Is he gonna fall on, like, what do we think happens with him?
I mean, Colts fans don't like when I talk about Chris Ballard, because I've been pretty
They
suspicious.
hate him.
I've been pretty suspicious of Chris Ballard for a
Oh,
while,
in the
and
past. They hate him
yeah,
now.
yeah, and now I think we're starting to get there. I made the joke with Trent Baalke: the number 2 job of a general manager is to win the Super Bowl. Number 1 job is to keep
Yeah.
the job. Chris Ballard, if you want to look like a good drafter, sign all your draft picks to big second contracts, right? Oh man, we're drafting great tackles and linebackers. We drafted Zaire Franklin and we gave him this contract, and Braden Smith, and he got this big contract. He must be good. No, man, you got, like, if we widen our scope to the other 32 teams, you can't just be the Indianapolis, snow globe, right? You never cross the line. You never get outside of that system and go and bring other guys in. Think about Gus Bradley and how, like, just hackneyed of a defensive coordinator that hire is, right? Like, it's kind of a little bit of like the Mike McCarthy, Brian Schottenheimer thing.
Yeah.
This is kind of solved. They are so comfortable being comfortable. And you cannot win Super Bowls that way. You have to take risks. You have to go
Well,
get young players, big players, and just
Richardson was the risk, right?
it
But
was the risk in the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, Trey Lance sense of the risk, right? Where it's like, all right, like, and what if we had a Josh Allen? But it's hard to be like safe. What if we had a Josh Allen? Like, there's shades of gray between those two things.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Falcons. It's funny because if you had asked me this early in the season and knowing that they were going to miss the playoffs, likely, assuming that we're assuming here that the Bucks beat the Saints,
Yes.
and Falcons are not actually technically eliminated, but I would have said no pass rush. But my answer has changed. Believing in a late 30s quarterback coming off of Achilles is why they're not in the postseason.
Yeah.
And hand up, I thought it was a good signing. I thought he would be fine. I was wrong. This is why I did New Year's resolutions early in the week, and I said I will never believe in a 30-something-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles. I meant Kirk Cousins and Rodgers.
Yeah.
And Cousins, he might be healed next year. I don't know. I truly don't know, but I would be very nervous about it, because if this season has taught me nothing else, it is that is a brutal injury for quarterbacks of any age, but clearly for quarterbacks who are getting up in the years. There were just games this season that were very winnable that they lost because of Cousins. And notably, Ben, the defense actually got better as the year went on. Like, they put up some pretty damn impressive performances. Shout out to Jimmy Lake, who that was a hire a lot of people I was dubious of. I actually think he did a pretty damn good job by the end of the season.
And also, like, Ra, who,
it is what it is.
Yeah, Ra's like a defensive coach by trade, and like, I think you see some of the Raheem Morris fingerprints on that defense and how it plays. I also think, like, if we're listing reasons why the Falcons didn't make the playoffs, the head coaching part of Raheem Morris and some of the old clock management, some of the old game management, I think really, really reared its head, which you learn a lot of good stuff when you are coaching under Sean McVay for many years. There's one thing you do not learn, and that is how to manage the end of a game. And so, yeah, I think that's a big point of value add for the Falcons. But yeah, like, why did they make the playoffs? Because they bought something in Kirk that they didn't actually have.
So I guess I didn't really, I don't think I got into the timeout thing. A question I get a lot is like, why don't coaches just have someone to do that for them? They do.
Mm-hmm.
They all do. They don't listen to them all the time. So you have to have someone who's handling game management, and you have to have that direct communication, and you have to take their advice, basically. And I don't know what the setup is in Atlanta, but when people watch football games and they wonder why some coaches appear to be just completely awful at it, it is purely because they're not, like, taking the advice usually of somebody else. It's wild. I mean, I don't know how in 2024 it still happens, but it does all the time, obviously.
And like, the other coaches also love to prepare for like the worst case scenario. And in Raheem's head, he's thinking he gave
an explanation where he was,
he's like, Penix takes a sack, and then he goes down. And then if we're able to do this, and that way we throw him middle of the field, it's like, okay, yes, true. Those are circumstances that can eventually exist.
Yeah.
The one that currently exists is rookie quarterback in his first road start trying to set up the offense with 34 seconds ticking. Like, you have to address the issue now. So coaches love to be like, but what if this bad thing happened? The bad thing is happening.
Defensive coaches also tend to think about it from the perspective of the defense making a play. Okay, more coaches on the horizon for me, but back to you for the AFC.
Yeah. So I have the Dolphins and the Bengals left. Dolphins at 8-8 right now. Really, like the Tua absences, right? I think it's probably a big deal. This is most likely a playoff team if Tua is able to stay healthy. So Tua health looms over this team, looms already discussion over this team. It always will. If you want to step outside of that and do something a little bit more addressable, right? There remains so much disregard for the offensive line in this organization, just an unwillingness to invest in that spot. Robert Hunt's out of the building.
Another GM who I am.
Right. And so, in order to make this offense work, you just need to have such an elite low time to throw, something that Tua is so good at, that fast release, that quick decision making, that even when like it works for Tyler Huntley and it works for Skylar Thompson, it doesn't work because they just can't get rid of the ball fast enough to make the line tenable. There's still no running game to speak of. Talked about this a little bit with the Bengals without Chase Brown. If I just know you have to live in drop back, I can deploy a lot more solutions than I can if I have to actually fear a running game, which nobody does against the Dolphins. So they're still really bad against playoff teams over 500 in the cold weather because they are so min-maxed. They're so one-dimensional in terms of how this offense is built. No matter what happens, Tyreek Hill's, age and contract and Jalen Waddle's health and Tua's health, no matter what happens with the key guys in this offense, Mike McDaniel has to figure out a way. McDaniel? Yeah, McDaniel. I always get them wrong. McDaniel's got to figure out a way to make this offense a little bit more balanced, a little bit more NFL grown up at some point. If they're going to be able to take the leap from like, wow, cool, zany stuff you do, to like, all right, you're an actual scary playoff offense.
When Tua got hurt, this team was, people had pointed to the lack of success that they had with backup quarterbacks. Although you just finally got a win with one, right? By the way,
Yeah.
with Huntley, and they said,
Probably
"Wow, this."
again against the Jets because Tua can't go, so like they need to do a second one now.
And there was this. I saw like this sort of sentiment. Oh, see how important Tua is to the offense. That was kind of presented as like evidence of Tua's value. I see it as evidence of how unbelievably fragile the build is of this team, which isn't to say that Tua is valuable to them, but you cannot create an offense that's so dependent on everything you just described in terms of the quick release. This team is not well constructed. And Ben, I'm just looking right now. So the Dolphins finished the season 30th in run DVOA. They have not been able to run the football in this
God, who's worse?
Mike McDaniel 2 era. I know, right? I'm guessing it is Vegas. Yeah, Vegas and New England.
Yeah, it tracks.
So here are the teams in the top 10, 11, I guess we go down. Baltimore, Detroit, the Bills, the Packers, the Eagles, the Falcons and the Bucks, Commanders, the Cardinals, the Chiefs, and then the Rams are just outside. Like those are the playoff teams. And a lot of them are pretty good at passing the ball, but looking at them, there's a bunch of them that are actually outside the top 10 in passing.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot succeed in this current era of football with as bad a run game as Miami has. And everything they do this offseason has to be based on fixing that.
Yep. When they took Devon Achane, right, it was kind of like, whoa, cool, right? Fast and everything. And now
Fake news. He's a great player, but
yeah, they took him to be this whirligig screen swings, pass catcher out of the backfield, which is just a disregard for what the running back position actually needs in terms of a guy who you can put the ball into his belly 4 yards by line of scrimmage 150, 200 times a season, right? Like that. Why was Bucky Irving available for the Buccaneers? Because he can't be that caliber of a player. He can't be that high volume of a player. And you kind of need that guy to make a running game go in the NFL. Something that the meatheads have always told the nerds about the running game that we've always kind of struggled to understand.
The Buccaneers, who have invested heavily
in the
draft capital and free in their offensive line, and look how it's paid off. So,
this Dolphins, the Tua thing and the backup quarterback thing is like, man, if you want to argue to me that Tua is integral to the offense, I will argue for you that the offense has been built such that Tua has become integral. Yeah.
Okay, Bears for me. Lot went wrong. I wrote just top to bottom coaching. This is, I mean, there's so many problems, both the offense and the defense taking a step back, by the way, this year, which was entirely predictable in some ways. But, Eberflus, I mean, whether it was the way they handled Caleb, the play you got out of him, obviously, time management, game management, moving on, giving Thomas Brown, it was just a disaster, start to finish. There are issues with the roster, no doubt, but I just think they had the wrong coach in place from the jump, and it was kind of doomed from the beginning. And in retrospect, I think that's something I wish I'd been a little bit more skeptical of. I remember thinking like, Eberflus, I don't know about sticking with him, but that
Mhm.
was a disastrous decision.
Yeah, and the disastrous decision is twofold. First, that you're bad this year. You had to fire your head coach if you go through a new search. The second thing is you are 1 year into ruining Caleb, right? Just as in Justin Fields' first season with that Matt Nagy offense, you were 1 year into ruining Justin Fields, which who knows if Fields going to become good or not, Caleb good or not, whatever. The point here being the snake eats its own tail, right? The Ouroboros goes, the spirals goes. Okay, we had bad coaching, and now we're not able to develop our quarterback, and we're not bringing in good players to help develop our quarterback, and it goes and it goes and it goes. So by the time you get the new coach in and they get a few guys that they need to make the offense work, Caleb's now got David Carr and he's terrible against pressure and he sees ghosts and whatever. You have to move on to a new quarterback, but that guy's not good soon enough, so you fire that coach. Bears fans already know what I'm talking about here, but the big issue was in not pairing Caleb with a new staff is that you allowed the spiral to continue, and now you need Ben Johnson to yank you out of it. Because if it's not Ben Johnson, I don't know who, man.
All right. We'll do the Bengals here, even though obviously they are statistically still alive. We talked about their game at the beginning. I mean, this is another easy one.
Yeah, the Bengals tried to yank 2022 into 2024 on defense, right? They tried 2021 into 2024 on defense, right? Von Bell and Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard are still going to be our pass rush, and Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson are still going to be our linebacking group, and we're going to keep running it back with these tent poles, with these cornerstones on defense, and then because we're not a team that cycles a ton of money and makes some big free agent additions, and we had to do a lot of that stuff on offense and worry about the Joe Burrow contract and the Jamar Chase contract. We signed all these offensive linemen, what have you. We're, DJ Reader's going to get out of the building, and Cheeto Awuzie is going to get out of the building, and Jesse Bates is going to get out of the building, and we're just going to be able to plug and play some draft guys in here. It's like, man, firstly, 2021 is not 2024. This is the NFL. We move. Things go fast. Like even Hendrickson keeping the clock where he's kept it has already been amazing. But like the Hubbard fall off, the Jermaine Pratt fall off, the Von Bell fall off have been, spiraling issues, right? Dominoes for this defense. And then draft and develop. Like, yeah, if you're able to nail some third round picks and some fourth round picks, and if Cam Taylor Britt were that dude, and if Akeem Davis Gaither were that dude, and Miles Murphy and Joseph Ossai were that dude, then sure, you could color in the gaps. You missed. You got to a Super Bowl with a young team. You open up a window and you miss your picks. Happens sometimes. Really sucks. Now you have one of the worst defenses in football.
We got to demote Big Lou to. Is he even medium Lou anymore?
I think it's just Lou Anarumo. Like I think he is without moniker. He is untitled.
Because you can look at him and say, well, the players aren't good, but is part of he is very involved in picking and drafting and development like that.
And he runs a
especially
very
with that team.
complex communication oriented defense that you can't. There are some defense in the league you just kind of plug and play some guys into. That is not this defense. And it'd be nicer if they could make things easier on the young players, but they don't really do that.
Lost season for Cincinnati, most likely. Very clear reason why. We'll see what happens, though. Maybe Carson Wentz proves haters wrong.
If this season forced them to pass so much that if they then actually pay T and Chase, then it's all worth it. It's all worth it.
Lean into it.
Yeah,
that's gonna be weird. I don't know. I just think T is so obviously deserving of a massive, massive contract. I just don't know how they can do it. I just don't. But we'll get into it.
Real quick, T, best wide receiver 2 in football, ? Your options are Chris Godwin, Devontae Smith, maybe like Deebo Samuel a little bit, Jordan Addison, Jalen Waddle. Where are you at?
I'm going T.
Yeah.
Smith and Godwin are the next two, but
to me, Devontae's the only other guy that's in that conversation, and they're both like kind of different but also similar in terms of the plays that they make. But
yeah,
I always anytime T has a big game, I always see some Patriots fan or whatever being like, well, I don't know if he's worth $30 million just because he plays behind Chase, who doesn't get high volume. I promise you, I swear to you on my life, on everything, you take my job if I'm wrong. Please don't. T Higgins is very, very much worth $30 million.
He I would say just the catch radius alone is probably what elevates him above Smith for me, and then obviously the contested catch ability. But he is just an unbelievable player. All right. That's it for this week. I will be back to preview the wildcard games, see what those are in the coming week. Ben, thank you so much for joining me on New Year's Day. We made it through a Texas victory. Ohio State is up. We'll see how that one.
So I said, do you want to just stay on and just update listeners on a game they're not watching live?
Oh my God. All right. Well, thank you so much for everybody who listened. I don't have to do the end of year thing. I did that last week. This is the new year. God, I'm not going to get emotional. That's Done with. You guys can check out this podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/@Mina Kimes. Also posting an interview with Lane Johnson. I'll probably post it on audio too because it was a really fun interview. He was fantastic. You guys can check this out wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening to this, I don't know why I need to say that. It's silly. Thank you, as always, to the folks at Omaha Productions, Kirsten Sebecki, Anthony Jimenez, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Tucker Tashjian. Thank you to Lenny. All right, that's it for now. I'll be back next week.